Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Behind the Bulletin. Tonight, we take you behind the curtain of a moment that has shaken the nation to its core, a moment so emotional, so painfully unforgettable, that those who witnessed it still struggle to speak about it today. What was meant to be a simple final appearance became a heartbreaking revelation that left the entire cast in tears, and millions more unable to forget. Today, we uncover Lee Soon-jae's final stage moment revealed, the heartbreaking truth that shattered everyone. What really happened on that stage? Truth did he reveal in his final moments under the spotlight? Why does this moment continue to haunt the hearts of viewers around the world? Stay with us, because what unfolded that night was not just a performance. It was a farewell wrapped in truth, emotion, and a devastating message no one saw coming. Let's begin. The theater lights glowed softly as the audience filled the seats, unaware that they were about to witness a moment that would linger in the nation's memory long after the curtains fell. It was supposed to be a special night, a celebration of Lee Soon-jae's legendary career. A night of laughter, nostalgia, and respect. People whispered excitedly, fans held banners, and the cast moved backstage with a warm energy that always filled the room before a performance. But behind the bright smiles and carefully rehearsed lines, things felt different. Lee Soon-jae, who had always radiated calm confidence before stepping on stage, sat alone in his dressing room longer than usual. His hands rested gently on his knees, but his fingers twitched slightly, betraying an emotion no one could quite read. The makeup artist paused mid-application when she noticed the distant look in his eyes, a look he quickly masked with a reassuring smile. "I'm fine," he said softly. "Just thinking." But the truth was far more complicated. As showtime approached, a subtle tension rippled through the staff. A stagehand later recalled seeing him standing by the backstage curtain, staring out at the dimly lit audience as if absorbing every detail of the moment, as if committing it to memory. Another cast member said she overheard him murmuring a line under his breath. Not from the script, but something personal, something heavy. When the opening music began, the stage burst to life with color and energy. Yet the moment Lee Soon-jae stepped into the spotlight, fell over the room, an instinctive, quiet recognition that something was different. His posture was steady, but his expression carried a tenderness, almost a sorrow, that no one had seen in him before. He delivered his early lines flawlessly, drawing laughter and applause in all the right places. But his castmates noticed it first. His pauses were longer, his breaths deeper, and his eyes carried a glass-like sheen, as though he were fighting emotions he had not planned to reveal. Midway through the show, the script called for a reflective monologue. It was a scene he had performed dozens of times over the years, one that always drew a warm response. Tonight, something shifted. He stepped forward, took a slow breath, and looked out at the audience, not at the stage lights, not at his marks, but directly into the sea of faces watching him. The silence that followed was thick, charged, almost trembling. And then he spoke. Not the scripted line, not the rehearsed dialogue, but something raw. "Put on this stage for most of my life," he said, his voice softer than anyone expected. "But tonight feels different. Tonight feels like a goodbye." The cast froze. The audience leaned forward, confused but unable to look away. He continued, each word heavy with emotion. "I've carried so many stories, so many characters, so many moments on my shoulders, but there's one truth I've never had the courage to share." A murmur rippled through the audience. Some thought it was part of the show. Others sensed immediately that it wasn't. Backstage, panic flickered among the staff. The director signaled frantically, unsure whether to stop the scene or let him continue. But no one moved. No one dared interrupt what was unfolding. Lee Soon-jae's eyes glistened under the lights as he pressed a trembling hand to his chest. "I've hidden my pain behind my performances," he said. "And I told myself the world didn't need to know." Sometimes, carrying a secret becomes heavier than carrying a script. The crowd fell into absolute silence. A shaky breath escaped him. "And tonight, I can't pretend anymore." The cast members watching from the wings felt their chests tighten. Some were already in tears, instinctively sensing the weight of the moment. This was not acting. This was not performance. This was truth. The truth he had kept buried for too long. And what came next would shatter everyone in the room. The moment the words left his lips, the atmosphere inside the theater changed completely. It was no longer a performance. It was no longer entertainment. It was a man lowering the final wall he had spent a lifetime keeping up. The cast watched in stunned silence. Some covering their mouths. Others gripping each other's hands. Even the orchestra faltered for a second. Bow strokes trembling as they sensed the gravity of what was unfolding. Lee Soon-jae took another step toward the audience. The spotlight tightening around him as though the stage itself wanted to hold him gently. He looked down, inhaled shakily. And then, voice thick with emotion, continued. 4 years, he said. I have carried an illness I chose not to name. A collective gasp echoed through the room. Even those who had no medical expertise felt the weight of the confession. The cast backstage clutched their chests. His juniors, barely holding back tears, whispered. No, this can't be real. He looked up again, a faint smile breaking through the sorrow in his eyes. I didn't hide it because I wanted to be strong, he said. I hid it because I was afraid that if the world saw my weakness, I would stop being who I am in your hearts. Tears began falling across the audience. Stranger comforted stranger. People held their breath, knowing they might never see him speak like this again. The cast members stepped closer to the wings, desperate to reach him, yet unable to break the spell of the moment. He later said they had never seen such vulnerability on any stage, not from him, not from anyone. He continued, voice trembling but resolute. I came here tonight knowing this might be my last time standing beneath these lights. The doctors, they told me I should rest. Let out a soft, heartbreaking laugh. But how could I? This stage is my home. Are my family. A sob broke out from the back of the theater. On stage, Lee Soon-jae's eyes shimmered, as though he could feel every emotional tremor around him. Before I leave this world, he said, I needed to say one thing I never had the courage to say. He paused. Every heart in the room stopped with him. I wasn't ready to go. Not yet. A wave of tears crashed across the cast. One actress collapsed to her knees backstage, covering her face as she cried uncontrollably. Another castmate whispered, why didn't he tell us? Why did he carry this alone? But the truth was still not complete. Lee Soon-jae wiped a tear from the corner of his eye and looked out at the sea of faces, faces frozen in shock, grief, disbelief. I'm not afraid of dying, he said softly. Afraid of leaving you all behind. Your laughter, applause, they kept me alive longer than any medicine. He placed a hand over his heart. If this is my final bow, please know that I cherished every moment. At that moment, a stagehand could no longer hold back and ran onto the stage, grabbing his hand gently and whispering, Teacher. You don't have to continue. Tears streamed down her cheeks. He squeezed her hand, offering a warm, tired smile. I'm alright, he whispered. This is something I needed to say. But then, his breath faltered. The audience gasped. The cast screamed his name. The orchestra dropped their instruments in a clatter. He steadied himself, though his legs trembled visibly. 2 cast members rushed forward, reaching out to support him. But he raised a hand to stop them. One last moment, he whispered. One last truth. Voice grew faint, fragile, but piercingly sincere. Don't remember me for how I live, but for how I lived. Those were his final words before he collapsed into the arms of his castmates. Chaos erupted. Curtain dropped almost instantly. The audience stood, crying openly, hands over their mouths. On stage, actors clung to him, sobbing uncontrollably. Calling his name as medics stormed in. He survived the incident that night, but he never returned to the stage again. Days later, when the nation learned of his passing, countless people replayed that final performance, his trembling voice, his confessions, his courage. Every time they reached that last line, the tears returned as if for the first time. His final stage moment was not just a performance. It was a farewell carved from his soul. A truth that broke everyone who witnessed it. A moment that still haunts millions today, long after the curtains fell and the lights dimmed. Echoes of Lee Soon-jae's final words continue to ripple through the hearts of millions. It wasn't merely a performance that ended that night, it was a lifetime of dedication, strength, and unspoken vulnerability finally finding its voice. Those who stood beside him during his last moment on stage would later say, they felt something indescribable, as if they had witnessed history, heartbreak, and grace all at once. Final truth, delivered with trembling courage. The message that united an entire nation in grief and gratitude. It reminded everyone that legends are human, that behind every applause there may be hidden pain. And behind every iconic smile, a heart that carries more than the world ever sees. Today, his last performance remains etched into the collective memory of countless people. It is replayed not for sorrow, reverence, for the raw honesty he gifted the world when he chose to remove the mask and speak as himself. For the very last time. You who stayed with us through this emotional journey, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for feeling. Thank you for honoring the truth behind his final moments. Your presence keeps his legacy alive. Empathy keeps his story beating. And your support reminds us why voices like his must be remembered, cherished, and never forgotten. Stay with us on Behind the Bulletin, where every story has a heartbeat, and every goodbye carries a truth worth telling.